several members have written in about carving Celtic knots, how to go about it. And this is a sort of typical Celtic knot with the bands interlacing over and under and so on. I myself don't carve a lot of Celtic knots. I've only done it a few times, and to be honest, I don't think it really works so well in wood. It works very well as a pen drawing in something like the Book of Kells or these manuscripts. Works large in stone. There are lots of Celtic crosses where you have these Celtic details. In jewellery, where you can plait wires. But wood, you've got this problem of the grain, which you don't have in these other mediums. So it's a little tricky to do in any complicated way in wood, but there is a way of going about it that will give you these nice sharp lines and tell you exactly what's going on. If you look online, you'll find all sorts of other ways of carving, and by all means experiment with them. But the way I'm approaching it as a carver is more or less as I'm approaching other carving, working from the backwards, the background outwards in a way and setting in. And I think the result is quite sharp, and that's really what you want. So when it comes to laying out and looking at Celtic designs, there are lots of books around. This is one that I had, I don't tell you how many years ago when I was sort of more interested in this, and it shows about the construction. You don't have to learn how to construct these various patterns, but it does help in understanding how the things work, and especially if you want your carving to go round a corner, or into a space or so on. Anyway, I'll put a link to that below, and we'll start off right at the beginning with our design, and I'll show you how the best technique I know to carve the Celtic knot. This is the design I'm going to use. You can see that it consists of a series of bands that go over and under. In fact, if I do this, you can see that a bit more clearly. So these bands go under and over like this. But what you're really seeing more than anything else are these lines here. This outline. It's a continual line that goes round and follows and comes back and so on. And that, in a way, that line really is what makes Celtic knotwork so interesting for many people. So the one thing to look at this, one thing that's important to look at it, is that if you're carving a line like this, you need to have an accurate line. So this design, I originally found a version of it on the web, and this is there's several like this all over the place. So what I did is I printed this off and had a look at it, and what you can see here is how thick this line is. Now it looks great when you put it in ink. There it is. It's a nice fat line, and that tells you what's happening. But when you carve it, you have to make a decision whereabouts on that edge you're going to carve, and you need this line to look as if it's going through. So the thicker this drawn line, the more possibility of an error in how you line the chisels or the gouges up. So my version here, which I've redrawn it completely for carving, is a thin line, and that's our line, and of course it comes through optically through each one. So that's what we've got to be careful about, those lines. Now the other thing that's going on, of course, is the spaces. So between these lines there are these areas here that we need to take back. So we have a question, first of all, how deep should that go? So it's very easy with a drawing, just colour it in, and there you have it. It's nice and standing out, and you can see what's going on. But with us, we need to think about the depth of this and around the edge here. So one of the things you need to think about is this is going to be in wood. So the grain, the actual fibres of the wood, are going in this direction here, like this. This is what's happening, which means that in some points, like here, it's very weak. Some points here, the grain is very long fibres, strong, short fibres, weak. So the deeper we make this, and the narrower this is, the more fragile this is going to be, and it's liable to cut off, to break off. So we need to think about the wood as such that we're going to be carving. So what depth do we need? Well, the answer is enough. just enough to make the point, enough to get a shadow around here, so not too deep. I would say probably no more than a third of whatever band you've got. So if your band is this wide, then it would probably talking about only this deep, this sort of thing. That's probably enough. As the band gets narrower, the depth means that let me draw it here. You can see this. So if we're going, there's a fat one. As the band itself get narrower, then of course at some point this would be a band that would be undercut. So we don't want it too thin. That's the sort of thing you do with jewellery and lines and so on. But in carving, a flat band, is really what we want. So what we need to get is that this background runs all the way through equally and is equal to this part here, so that it looks as if this whole carving is being placed on top of it. So just going back to our original drawing here. Okay. The one thing it's really worth pointing out is that this is repeated. This is a repeated pattern. So this space here, if we can carve that once, we can carve it again and again. The same here, same here, same here. If we can set in this line here, we can set in this line here. So in a way, this is like a moulding that's repeated. And you could take this pattern and you could just keep going as long as you like. So it would make a very good picture frame or a frame around a mirror or something. So and that's what we're going to carve. We're going to carve a sample of this as if it's standing out from the background, possibly as a frieze, as a repeat pattern. Anyway, that's just some overview of what we're looking for. We're looking for even depth, continuous lines, and a sense of the whole thing flowing across. So now let's have a look at what tools we might use to do this. Okay. Let me start by telling you about the tool I don't want you to use, or one I wouldn't use, and that's the V tool. I've seen it used many times online, and the idea is that it's a line, and therefore we can run the V tool around it, like so. But here's the problem. As I get my V tool around a corner, especially at any depth, two things are going to happen. First of all, this part of the V tool is a chisel, it's straight. So as you come round the corner, that heel there pushes into this edge here and damages it. So you'll never get a nice clean edge. It's also an angle, so the wall is scooped out at an angle rather than straight down, which we might not want. And the other thing is, as you come round the corner, one part of the V tool is going to dig into the wood, pull up the grain, and the other's with it. So generally it's just a fussy, awkward tool for use for tight curves. So we won't use that tool. We'll use something else, have a different approach altogether. The first tool we're going to need are chisels, and we're going to use chisels for these straight parts here, this sort of thing. So chisels come in various widths, like so. These are lettering chisels, and we're going to be just pushing them down and creating this edge like this. Now if you don't have a lettering chisel which has a bevel on both sides, you can use a carpentry chisel like this. This is a straightforward carpentry chisel, has a bevel on one side. You can certainly use these, but I'll show you exactly how we're going to use them in a minute. Let's move on. So we've got straights that we can take, that we can set the line in, and these curves here, in the same way, we will need gouges that will match these curves, and the trick is here is to be able to repeat that cut and that cut. So we'll need a certain number of gouges to do that. The other thing we'll need is here, the background here, we'll need to take that away, and for that we'll need flat gouges. This is a flat gouge, so it's not a chisel, it's slightly curved, and we'll take the background down here. Now we'll find that's very difficult to get in because this edge here will get in the way, so we will, and I really recommend you get some bent gouges. So this is the same tool as this one, but it's bent, and it'll enable you to get in here like this. So you'll need a number of bent gouges. What you need exactly depends on your design. The other thing that will be very good will be these tools. This is a corner chisel, but in this case it's slightly curved like a gouge, and you can see that it's left and right corner chisel, and where those will come into their own is in here, is in this sort of place here, in these corners. Cleaning up the corners, especially when they're not right angles, is quite tricky. So those are tools that are very useful. And lastly, to actually get into these corners, to set them in, we probably need something like either a fishtail chisel like this, or a skew chisel, like so. We'll need to help deal with the corners, or indeed a sharp knife will do it. So those are sort of tools we'll be needing, and I'll put a list down in the download. Here's the sample that I'm going to demonstrate the techniques on. I'm using a softish wood here called Gelatong, because that'll make it very easy for me to show what's going on. You could use a harder wood, in which case you might need mallets such as cherry or sycamore or maple. A softer wood, you get problems with this grain and bits falling off. So what I've done here is I've got my piece of wood glued on my drawing, and then I've taken my table saw and cut here, I think you can see the end here, cut a little recess on either side. I'm assuming that this would be something like a picture frame or a mirror frame, and you could extend this. This width here could be anything you like, this width here. Not too much, but you want something like that, and we'll have to come in here and take this edge out of the way. And in this case I'm going to take this edge off here, this end off here. But I've stuck it on here and I've cut that back. If you didn't do that, then you'll need to use just a relief, the sort of relief method I'm going to use here to take it out. So we stick stick our paper onto the wood. We can do something like that, and then I'm going to hold it in this vise here. One of the things that's not right with this is that what I need to have is this slightly above this block of wood here. So I need to make this so that I can get my tools in and across. You don't want this above it, you won't be able to get in there. So I need to adjust those. But that'll be held nice and firm in the vise, and then I can start carving it.